You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den with Michael Tennant. The best questions to ask a guy to see if he's the one. Ladies, I am super excited about today's guest. He is brilliant. He is living proof that there are quality men, conscious men everywhere of all ages, all over the globe. His name is Michael Tennant. He's the founder of Actually Curious, which we'll tell you about. He's an advocate for diversity, mental health, and empathy. And Actually Curious is, I love it. It's a conversation card game. Do you see how you could use this in your life? It's created to foster meaningful connection and spread empathy. And Actually Curious and Michael have been featured in the New York Times and NBC's Today and Goop and Refinery 29 and, New York Magazine, all of those things, all the places he should be because he's got an very powerful message. And we're going to talk today about how we can create connection and conversation through empathy and through curiosity, which is, let's just talk about real quick about how this applies to dating and relationships. There's such a different energy around like actually curious versus like getting in an environment and you're like interviewing someone to find out if they're your person. Like, what's the vibe? What's the energy? What's the intent of Actually Curious as how it creates connection?
Well, Actually Curious, the way we describe it is it's a card game and a movement to spread empathy. And it was always based around the idea of building trust and meeting people where they're at, and having a tool to go deeper over time and have thoughtful questions that help you explore your views, your background, just things that you might not bring up on a date, or you might not even bring up with one of your close friends, or even with yourself, frankly.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
when,
I guess,
well, I was just going to say, so like, because one of the things that I really like about this, because are you single or are you in a relationship?
no, I am married.
You're
As of,
married.
yeah, as of 4 months ago.
Woo!
Pandemic marriage.
I love a pandemic marriage. Okay, this is really awesome. So when you're dating, I mean, I just feel, I don't know how it is. I know you're a skosh younger than I am, but I feel like when people go, and even in networking professional experiences, people go with this, like, I call it like the get mentality, right? Like, I want to get something out of this, versus like creating empathy and really creating connection. Like when you do it that old way and that get mentality, how does it block empathy?
Well, I would say I actually have spent, if I'm keeping it real, I have spent some time in both the get energy and in the empathy energy space. And I think what I learned is that when I was in the get energy space, I actually didn't really know what I needed, in the sense of I didn't really know what I needed to feel whole. I didn't know enough about myself. And so therefore, I went out looking to seek my self confidence and my self worth and supplement that through, not just through dating, but through work, through a lot of things. I just wasn't really focused on myself. So I'd say in the empathy space, what I've found is I've been on a journey of understanding more what's been missing, in myself in terms of how to love myself fully and really invest in myself, and then to find a partner that reflects that. I think one like really easy example, is that I used to always be really attracted to people who were very extroverted and almost reflected this aspirational side of me. And today, these days, like my wife and I, we have really complementary temperaments. She's actually probably more extroverted than I am, and but basically she knows how to support me when I need that. And it was just like an area that would end up over time causing a rift in relationships that I didn't even know how to articulate.
And that's so brilliant. By the way, listeners want to know, when you watch TV with your wife, which one of you falls asleep?
Me, always. Although now that I'm in Copenhagen with her and the time zones are a little off, she's been falling asleep before me.
That's so funny. I've asked couples, and literally what I've just said, this is my scientific research that's not scientific. In every couple, there's one person who falls asleep. It's like, come on, let's just watch this. One person in the couple falls asleep, the other person doesn't. And then, you're like, hey, wake up, like, stop. Anyway, there you go. That's the answer. We're gonna interview couples forever
Does it
about this.
does it break more one way than the other, male or female, or
It does not. That's what I thought for sure. It was just husbands that fell asleep, because that's what mine does. And then when I started asking this question, women fall asleep too. Who
that's a really
knew?
good question. I might have to borrow that for a future edition.
Question. So this is really cool. So, and I'm curious, like, so what, like, and I love your vulnerability. By the way, when I met Michael on a panel that was sponsored by Girl Now Foundation, which is one of our organizational beneficiaries, and Selfish Box. Um, and it was looking at self-care. And what I loved about that panel is that, because everyone came from this approach of empathy and vulnerability, the connections that were created and the level and depth of conversation in that was really, really profound. So I'm interested to know, like, what was that turning point for you when you realized, like, the get energy isn't working in your life, and you wanted to make this switch and then actually become an advocate for empathy and connection?
Well, I'd say it happened first through I had a series of significant losses in my family in 2019. I lost two of my older brothers, and um, I actually returned to some toxic coping mechanisms just for a weekend. That very quickly, like, my nervous system seized up, and I realized, like, if I kept kind of going that direction, which is almost an extension of the get energy, um, that it wasn't going to work out well for me. And I'd say I started to focus really heavily on what my values were, spending more time with myself to understand, um, what happiness looked like, and what healing looked like. But I'll say alongside that, I had a partner who was there for me and there for that, and was able to sort of show me the kind of compassion and empathy that I needed to navigate this process of getting to know myself, alongside holding space for a partnership, which was really quite complex, and then layering on, like, family elements, which is really where the kinks start to show. I
Yep.
feel is when the family gets involved, and so more or less I started to say, this is pretty important, is that I started to pay more attention to what things felt like in my body,
Yes.
what insecure relationship, which I actually gravitated maybe towards in the past, which felt like anxiety and felt like literally would show up in my abdominal, and I would call that butterflies, and what a secure relationship felt like when that was absent, and when that got removed in situations like in family where it normally was. I just realized that I was in a situation that was in harmony with, and just almost had attracted the harmony that I desired.
That's so amazing, because I've been really talking a lot on this show and just with clients about this idea that, and we love that book, The Body Keeps the Score. Have you ever read that book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk?
I have
It's
recently.
so amazing. I had him on the show. Oh, he's amazing. So
Oh,
yeah, it's so great. Um, whenever I have the doctors, like the experts on the show, like, they're just very, like, analytical and, like, very intellectual and brilliant. And I always have, like, a fangirl crush on, like, these like old guy doctors. I'm like, give me a wisdom, right? Like, it's so brilliant. Um,
Me too.
so cool. But this, and I think this is a return. I think it's been coming up too, like even like the analogy of, or the parallel of even the pandemic, right? This whole body situation happening, right? This physical thing. And I think if we think of the physical up until now, at least so much of like, being strong or looking a certain way, right? And then all of a sudden, well being comes into mind. And what I love what you're saying is there's this extension of well being in body into being like, wait, the body is where the energy is. The body is actually the message that's going to tell me what feels essential to me in alignment with who I really am when I am in that whole place. So when you got to that place, Michael, and you sort of connected to what it meant, why the game? Like why the actually curious card game? Like what happened?
Well, yeah, we definitely weren't so deep in the somatics and somatic experiencing when we created the game. But we knew we had landed on a tool that could almost like gamify trust building. And we've been following that journey and started creating new additions that would meet people who actually with the next two editions we made, the happy hour edition and the culture edition, were two lighter editions so that we can make sure that people had a good entry point. The original game has 4 levels in it already, and those actually get take you through your views and your backgrounds, and just some groups aren't ready to do that, so we really needed to create the other two games. And then in for Memorial Day 2021, because our movement really didn't take off until until we lost George Floyd, we released the Human Rights Edition. So that's the most important, but also the most intense version yet. So we have 4 editions, and the idea is that you can really have this support and this tool and having thoughtful questions to meet people where they're at, no matter where you are in the relationship. So specifically in dating, but really the psychology can apply to anything. Um, you can really pick, is this person that you're dating, do you want to go right into the to getting into the topics that really matter, or would you rather start off a little bit more casual, and then graduate higher? So I mean, I really love the opportunity that we got to speak about Actually Curious in this setting, because the original two use cases that we thought about were around, yeah, organically going into the homes and helping bridge gaps, be a Trojan horse to bridge gaps where there's a little bit of there's already like an established distance. But the other was intentional dating, and that's kind of what we're talking about here.
I think that's so cool because my clients still use, that, and I'm sure you're familiar, the New York Times, like 38 questions to ask to build, that little experiment that was done. You've heard of that, right?
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
I actually had meetings with Dr. Arthur Aarons where I had a bit of like a fanboy situation.
Yeah.
Right. For Mandy Catrone, who's the author who wrote that article, and was really grateful that they made time to talk about this and review some of the early questions too.
That's
So yeah,
so
direct inspiration.
and it's so amazing. The other thing that's really interesting, and I love that you've gamified this, is because so my husband and I've been married like since 7 years, but I've been with my husband 13, and we went and did this really amazing workshop with Dr. John and Julie Gottman, who run the Gottman Institute, which they're like one of the foremost researchers on what makes healthy and happy relationships. And we were so
That
excited because we got to actually work with the Gottmans, which like
wow.
never happens. So we of course go to the little gift shop and we buy like the cards and all this stuff. But what was really interesting is, and this is why I love what you're doing because it's a little bit different, is every time like because I'm the instigator, right? I'm like, I'm like, let's connect, let's play the game. But it's not really a game. It's just a set of questions. And I sort of get to see my husband be like, oh God, here we go. We have to talk about feelings.
You know,
And go ahead, yeah.
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was in that place as we were creating this game. I was trying my best to also like field it with, because the team that helped support it was all female except for me. But getting my friends who were I'm far enough and they were further, but something that they would at least, enjoy. So the gamification really worked out in that way, that even though, yeah, there's still going to be that trepidation from anyone. If you read the rules bring in a little bit of competitiveness, which usually appeals a little bit to some of the people who are on the fence. Um, but people tend to freestyle a little bit. The only thing we try to drive home when people play is start light and level up as you build trust.
Yeah, that's really really a good piece because there is that I think it's like is it a myth? I don't know, urban legend, right? Like that if you're going to talk about what you think or you get asked a direct question that there's going to be pain involved, right? Rather than this like expression of that essential self, right? So like how can we change the narrative around that?
Oh man, I love how you're directing these questions. So I'm just gonna break it down real quick how we do this, because we do this in workshops. We've been invited into, corporations across like NASA, Stanford Psychology, um, for-profit organizations like IDEO, Bumble. Bumble was the first. Actually, their social media team brought us in to do workshops, and we're so blessed they were one of the first corporate. Um, but essentially, so we talked about body. So what we teach people is how to speak intelligently, or speak through a cognitive knowledge of their emotions. So the five core emotions, and how to start to have a relationship with their body, so they can recognize not when emotions are rising in their body, and have a better way of connecting, but also a better way of being resilient. So that fear that you talk about that comes up when difficult conversations come up, if you're truly committed to having those conversations, then you're prepared and you actually practice what it feels like in your body, so that you can return to a grounded place, but then also return to an open place. Because when we feel that fear, and we feel that fear in our bodies, we actually close off. And so we start to actually almost like protect the fear that we have, which then limits our ability to hear what we don't already know. So the somatics, what we've actually learned is that by teaching people and giving people tools to practice it, and build up almost their muscle memory around what happens to their body in response to different stimulus, it actually helps people to be better prepared to yeah, to just pay attention, and to remove that element when they're trying to really listen and get to know someone and get to know their perspective.
So let's use a real life example. So let's say there's Jack and Jane, and they're on a date, and Jane is 42, and she still wants kids, and she is on her second or third date with Jack, and she wants to have that conversation about like would you have kids? Do you want to have kids? Would you be open to having kids? And she's trying to figure out a way to be curious rather than guarded because she likes him. What what are some of those somatic cues, and are there any sort of ways that you could imagine having an entry point into that conversation if she's feeling nervous, scared, anxious about really being curious about this with someone that where the stakes are high?
Well, I think the first place that I'd approach this, if I were doing kind of taking the approach strategically, is I would spend some time in reflection with myself before engaging in the dates. And I'd ask myself these hard questions and see how it shows up in my body. So I'd have some awareness like directly. And I guess that part is just so important, because the relationship that you have with your honest relationship you have with yourself really reflects what you bring out in what you allow, and what boundaries you set for yourself. Um, how you catch like your more toxic tendencies in dating is really having that alone time with yourself. So the only reason why I felt the need to go back there is I think if some of these conversations, these topics are important by the third date, like I think that like for the relationship with myself, I would want to probably have them or at least like broach them. Probably even like I don't know, the second date feels appropriate. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the type of person who goes in immediately, especially if it's like you know. Uh, been there, done that. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to waste time. Maybe I do want to have fun. Maybe sometimes the conversation with yourself might yield that I think I want these things because the narrative tells me that, but my body is actually telling me I want to have fun. Like, and that's fine. So, okay. So, but back into the dating situation, I think I get really nervous before dates, and I used to like maybe like have a drink or like pace or have coffee or do things
Right.
that would elevate my nervous system more. So I just think like I'm actually where dating's concerned, I think it makes sense to have really strong awareness of what's going on in your body before, during, and after. Um, yeah.
I think one of the things that, so I want to just highlight two things that you said, which is like basically why I exist in the world is because, well, yes, everything that you do on the date, like that's really important, but it's the stuff that you do before, like your prep, is all based in our own, what we're in control of. Right. And so I love that you said you can even use these cards to like start to get clarity on your own values and start to feel like that somatic connection to like what is my truth. And one of the things that I think is brilliant that you also said is, like I'm a big believer in truly conscious choice. And when we talk about that often here and around, like we're not aware of how our choices are not really our own. That even though we think we're making a choice, there's so many filters. And so to really get that mind body connection and get clear on what's important to you, what it feels like in your body is like, when we're recording this, the Olympics are on. It'd be like, are you gonna go to Tokyo, like, after you haven't worked out for 6 months and expect to like do a great performance, right? Your best expression of you. No, you have to really know what you want and you have to really be connected to yourself before you can go connect to someone else. So I think I just want to highlight that because, you know, a lot of people they just want to get to that part where they meet someone and it's great and they're connected and it feels easy. And I think that you can't skip that step. So I just wanted to like high five you for that. And also, I love doing. I mean, I was being generous with the third date in that example, but having these conversations. The other thing that I think would be really cool, like for ladies, people who are listening to this show, is like practice having these conversations that feel like, and let's just use them difficult just because they're uncomfortable. Um, Practice having those kinds of conversations and articulating your values and your beliefs in a less stress kind of situation, whether you're playing this lighter level version of the game or you're having these conversations with friends and people you trust. Because I think one of the other things that I really want to talk about with you is, and I'm sure this came up with your human rights edition, is I'm here to debunk the myth that like conflict is bad, right? Or differing opinions is bad. And that you could still have a great relationship with someone where sometimes you have a different opinion if you have great communication and you can manage through conflict in a healthy way. So, talk to me about like what does it look like when you can tackle, a deeply personal or a challenging conversation that might feel like conflict but is actually just exploration and creating empathy and understanding.
Yeah. I want to, there's so many different ideas that came up as you were asking the question. So I'm just trying to distill it a little bit. Um, you made a phrase where you said that the idea of conflict can be bad or be scary. And I'm actually unpacking a book as we speak that covers 5 phases of empathy. And in it, a theme I really want to make sure to nail is how I normalize that we all have fears and judgments and biases, and oftentimes they're there to protect us in some way. They may not serve us any longer. They may not align. They may actually, you kind of spoke about your values coming from somewhere else, and you don't even know it. They may even come from elsewhere, these fears. Oftentimes they do. So when fear comes up, it prevents us from thinking about the bright things that can happen, from connecting to what's happening here in the present. So, I think our goal, which my goal in the book and through a lot of our work, is to say to folks like, hey, let's spend some time with what might happen if we let go of these judgments or just put them aside for a
Mm,
second. Connection happens. You learn new things. Your knowledge expands. You learn how to connect with other people more. You actually strengthen the muscle of letting go of your fears. Like it's incremental. So, but I think if we can get people to, like you said, start to see that conflict's not bad, or even that discomfort that you feel when on the other side, you can do it easier. You can be almost like a moderator, a leader sometimes when other people aren't as far along. That is a step on this journey, is you can actually like stay there when things are uncomfortable and actually be grounded enough to lead other people in the whole group to a place of harmony, and that's a beautiful thing.
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, doing that, and you talked about families, right? And so, I'm all about the ripple effect, right? So if I can help one person do this, right, and then they're doing it with their partner, and now they're modeling that in front of their family, right, their children, or they can have my kids always joke. There was a scene in my during COVID. So, I my kids are basically adults. They come back for COVID, but now it's like a family of five, but there's not the dynamic of like the parents and the little kids, like mom and dad are in control of all of you. It's like five adults co coexisting in one home. We're having this conflict, and in the middle of it, one of my daughters just starts laughing, and it like obviously broke the ice. I was like, "What's so funny?" She's like, only our family fights like this. Like, my experience of you is that the story that I made up was, and it's just, right? Because we're all like navigating our emotional intelligence and our awareness and all of these things. And it was funny, right? Like, she was like,
We
people don't
all-
fight like this.
Yeah, it sounds like you. Yeah, it's kind of funny when everyone when everyone has more evolved language and more awareness. That could be quite comical in itself.
Well, it is. It's just like most people are like, you fucking bitch, slam the door, walk away, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm feeling very sad right now. Anyway, but this is the
but
point. Go ahead.
to react to that real quick, I
Yeah.
just all a journey, and I have those moments still. Like I have those moments with, like I had a moment with my mom yesterday where I realized that like there's this stubborn part of me who like remembers wanting to hold on to this like needing the last word on something, but I could connect to my body while I was saying, Mom, you realize you did this? And I was like, this doesn't mean as much to me. So why are these words coming out of my mouth? It was almost just like out of practice. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, it's like a habit, right?
right. So I just want, for
Yeah.
those who are wherever you are in your journey, if you're willing to become a ninja at having compassion versus reacting in judgment or fear of like the growth on the other side of the compassion is we're all there. We're all
Yeah.
somewhere on
Well,
it.
totally. And I have those, I mean, fuck, I'm not perfect. I'll have those moments where I'm like my body feels, I'm like, I don't why are these words coming out? I'm like, it's like I feel it happening. I'm being so mean right now to my husband, my poor husband. Which is great. So here's the other thing, and you probably know this too, but I'll share it with our listeners. Like the Gottman Institute talks about how like 69% of a couple's challenges are perpetual. They're perpetual problems. That doesn't mean you're going to be fighting the whole time. It means that you need to learn how to live with these uncomfortable feelings and actually navigate through conflict with the desire for mutual understanding, which is literally, your brand, right? I'm actually curious, right?
Right.
And I really want to highlight that because this game and this mission that you have is to really just normalize and make people excited about creating mutual understanding. Um, and I think that's the key to connection and love. And, sometimes we can't solve the problems, sometimes they are just perpetual and you just have to create more and more attempts at understanding and adjustments. And so I love that you're doing that. When you look at, some of your favorite questions, that maybe our listeners could just like use as a little teaser to get started. What are the ones that people just like love, or the ones that are the one question that ends up preventing you from asking any others because it just goes so deep?
Ooh, that was a twist at the end.
Yeah, right, because you're like, oh, we never got past that, like those first two questions or whatever it is.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, because I pulled four questions for you, but we don't have to go through them all. I'm gonna go with what is one thing you totally geek out about? Um, because of the way you twisted the question at the end, because we use this in workshops, and I used to use this as an icebreaker question, and then we would spend like it would just filibuster the workshop because people would spend so much time talking about the one thing that they geek out about. It also was my favorite question when we first made the Actually Curious Happy Hour edition.
I
What is
love it.
one thing you geek out about, Marnie?
I was going to ask you. One thing that I love to geek out about is what we're talking about right now. Like, I love to geek out about somatics and consciousness and emotional intelligence and learning more about neural programming and neuroplasticity. Oh my God, I could just geek out about it all day long. What about for you?
So I could totally just thumbs up emoji on that, but I think actually the thing I've been really geeking out on right now is exploring freedom, and but what that means for me at this very moment, the depth that I'm at with it is I have this need. I think a lot of us struggle with it to keep doing new things and to fill the time and to almost feel like just existing and resting and taking some time to ourselves like is okay. I still have shame around that, and I think that is a larger freedom that kind of I don't know, not to get I guess I'm getting really deep with it, but keeps us really tied to a lot of our habits or even to some of the really subtle commercial habits that we have that eat at our happiness.
Oh my God. So, first of all, like, freedom is my word for 2021. So, I've been geeking out on freedom all year. Um, it's really it's such a great thing because there's like freedom for me. It's like freedom from like the entanglements, from attachments, freedom. I ended up getting off social media like 97%, except for the one group for our listeners. Woo, I'm going on Facebook for you that are in our Facebook group. But other than that, I'm off because I wanted to create lots of different freedoms. So look at that, people. See, if we were on a date right now, we would have found all these common things. We could have gone off on a conversation about freedom. I bet you and I would have never even got to the second question. Okay,
That's the
let's do
fun part.
another one. Yeah, well, let's do another one.
Okay. All right. This one I really love. Um, it's let's celebrate you. Tell us three big wins you had this week.
I love this question. Three big wins I had this week. Well, my daughter, who is in college and wasn't going to come home for the summer, lives in a frat with like 90 people. So, needless to say, when she got sick, non-COVID sick, the old-fashioned kind where you just have like bronchitis, she came home, and so we've been able to like hang out for a few days. So that's been super fun. I'm also celebrating this interview because when I first met you, I said to our mutual friend Ruby, I was like, I got to get this guy. So I'm totally celebrating this. And the
Mhm.
third thing is that I have decided I am able to be free from this house that I've lived in for 22 years that I raised my kids in, and I'm ready to sell. and go on my next adventure and really live that freedom lifestyle. And that's been a huge emotional journey for me for the last freaking year. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Woohoo! What about you?
Ooh, okay, I didn't prep my answer, so I'm just gonna check in with
Wing
my
it,
body
baby. Check in with your
and,
body.
and answer. Three big wins. So yeah, no, I'm super stoked to be here with you, Marni. There's such a wonderful connection, and just to be among the amazing guests that I read and geek out about. That you've recorded, to be among their presence is such a huge win. Um, yeah, this week we wrapped production on a series that we're going to be releasing in Q4 on video, podcast, and an article companion with a trade organization called Digital Content Next, and maybe others, fingers crossed.
Woo!
Called Driving Change from the Inside, which profiles diversity and inclusion leaders from across the organization. We have the CMO of NPR, we have the chief people officer at Robin Hood, and Arnold Havas, and the head of DE&I at NASA. So a huge
Wow. Woo! I'm celebrating for you.
It's been a huge stretch and a long way coming, and I guess it's also a halo to the third, which is celebrating freedom and the exploration of it and the unfolding of it. Because in addition to, like, one thing that's helped enable this freedom to bring it back is having a wonderful partner who complements me in so many ways. And actually, back in like February, I was like, hey, I really want to track towards freeing up the bandwidth to pursue more content initiatives, and she's really supported me in that. And now I'm out here in Copenhagen, which a kid from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, first generation Jamaican, who now has the flexibility to be here with his wife in Copenhagen. I'm definitely on the way to freedom, and I celebrate freedom.
I love that. I have a friend right now who's living in Copenhagen. You should probably hang out with her and her husband. They're so
Link us
cool.
up.
I will. They're on their freedom journey too. I love it. And you know what's really cool? Like, even like listening, and this is what I love about what you're doing. Ladies, rewind, listen for the last 5 minutes, and you could see the energy, like the energy between us, right? By having these conversations and connecting and talking about what we're passionate about, the energy shifts, right? And you create this energy together. And so, like, instead of going on a fucking date and be like, so what do you do? How long have you been on Match? Ugh, no. Like, that is not going to create energy. All need to get these card games and practice and then bring them on a date and just be like, want to play a game? One of my favorite lines is this. You guys can use this. If you're like, I don't want to bring a game, or like, that's what if he thinks I'm weird? Be like, I have an idea of something I'd like to try. Would you be game? Any guy, what's the guy going to say, Michael?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's gonna be
Yeah.
some cadence that, if you listen in, you can really understand where they're at on the yeah.
Totally, right? And then you're like, great. And you're like, and you could just bring a couple of questions, bring the game. But I really, I cannot tell you like how much there is in having an intention and having a plan. And it is not, and if you have any limiting beliefs, by the way, that like that's weird or someone's going to think you're extra or whatever it is because you're asking this level of question or you're being intentional about it. That's not your person. Our ladies are looking for, like, if we could clone Michael, age him up, age him down, whatever you need, right? Put there and find your guy. There's so many conscious men. So my last question for you is just on that line. In your work in making an impact with Actually Curious, tell me what you have learned about breaking the myth about men, that they don't talk about their feelings, that they're closed up. I mean, I know that it's more challenging, but like I really believe that there are men that want to have these conversations right now and that they're totally out there. They're single and they're looking for someone who wants to meet them at that level. But what have you learned about this? You started out, you're the only guy on a team of women creating this game. What have you learned about men through this journey?
Well, looking at me, I'd say is just be patient and be willing to meet them where they're at. But I would say that the really fun and interesting thing and shortcut almost through actually curious is that men do want someone that they can trust to go deeper with and be vulnerable with. It's not something that we often that I often go out touting, but it's really when with friendships, with other men, with other women, with and then also with romantic partners, when you can click to that deeper level where you both showed yourselves in a way that you don't typically show others, then you know there's something special there. So why not have an approach that kind of helps support that process? Like we don't want to be the only tool in that, but that's ultimately what you're looking for if in an intentional partnership, and whether that other person knows it or not, that's what they're looking for. So we just want to help you get past the bullshit.
I love that. Oh my God. Well, you guys, there's links to the actuallycurious.com site and shop in the show notes, but there's the icebreaker bundle, the starter bundle. I love the necessary conversations bundle, the curiosity edition, human rights, culture, happy hour, and you can even get a tote bag to put all your little card decks in. I highly recommend. Michael, it's been such a blast connecting with you. Enjoy Copenhagen. And ladies, whatever you're doing, I say it every time, but be curious and empathetic with some damn dignity. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes, and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.